Pokémon was first released in Japan in 1996, all Pokémon-related merchandise has a copyright year beginning with 1995. This is likely due to the fact Pokémon Red and Green were delayed, which isn't surprising given the game's troubled development cycle. In the international versions of Red and Blue, there's unused trade data where the player would trade a Butterfree in exchange for a Beedrill. This data also appears in Pokémon Yellow, but Yellow also has data for 2 other trades, as the ones in Cerulean and Vermilion City had been removed. They were replaced with trades of a Pidgeot for a Pidgeot and a Mew for a Mew. Both Pokémon were nicknamed Matsumiya, likely in reference to scenario writer Toshinobu Matsumiya, of which Yellow was his first credited game. These names were even translated into English. The 2 Pokémon were renamed Marty and Bart, respectively, perhaps as a reference to both Marty McFly and Bart Simpson. All of these trades are functional and can be accessed through hacking. Trainer rematches were a feature introduced in Pokémon Gold and Silver. However, in an interview with Pokémon CEO Tsunekazu Ishihara, he revealed that during Red and Green's testing and debugging process, the game would trigger a trainer battle every time you walked past them. This would happen even if the player already fought the trainer before, thus allowing rematches. This also made areas like Viridian Forest take upwards to an hour to get through. The encounter rate for wild Pokémon was again much higher, with the player being unable to take 2 steps without bumping into a Pokémon. Ishihara said it would have taken players literally half a day to get through a cave, so the team changed things accordingly for the final game. Another element that was introduced in Gold and Silver were shiny Pokémon. One interesting tidbit about shiny Pokémon is that during the introduction of Pokémon Black and Pokémon White, there's a 1 in 8,192 chance that the Minichino shown by Professor Juniper will be a shiny. There's several other instances of shiny Pokémon appearing in catching tutorials and other unobtainable sections, going back as far as Ruby and Sapphire. In the catching tutorial for Ruby and Sapphire, it's possible for the rival Wally to capture a shiny Ralphs, only for it to not be shiny in all future appearances. The legendary Pokémon in Diamond is Dialga, which controls time, not space. It's Pokémon Pearl's mascot, Palkia, that controls space. Unused Pokémon content has managed to be unearthed from non-Pokémon games. Music from Pokémon Diamond and Pearl exists within the data of Catherine on PlayStation 3. What's even more interesting is that this track is an original arrangement of the game's wild Pokémon battle theme, and wasn't just ripped from the games.
Many Pokémon have disturbing origins, notably several psychic types. Kadabra is said to have once been a human boy. The boy had extrasensory powers he couldn't control, and when he awoke from bed one morning, he had become a Kadabra. Drowsy is based on the Baku, a Japanese mythological figure that commonly takes the form of a tapir and is said to eat people's dreams. The Baku is even referenced by name in Pokémon Fire Red and Stadium, as well as the anime, saying Drowsy is a direct descendant of the creature. Its evolved form, Hypno, has frequently been depicted as more of a serious threat. Pokédex entries from Sun and Moon have stated that while it rarely harms people, it's still an extremely dangerous Pokémon. There's also several Pokémon whose existence is tied to human death. Yamask was born from the souls of buried humans, retaining their memories and carrying a mask resembling their former face. Yamask is based on the Death Mask, a practice where, following death, a likeness of the person's face is created by making an impression with a wax cast.
The idea for Pokémon Go partly came from an April Fool's publicity stunt in 2014. The stunt saw Google and the Pokémon Company teaming up with a small game that challenged users to find Pokémon in the Google Maps mobile app. Players could catch 151 Pokémon from various generations and would be crowned Pokémon Master if they caught them all with the exception of Mew. Interestingly, the same group that made the April Fool's video also created the original trailer for Pokémon Go. Although the April Fool's joke was the catalyst for Pokémon Go's creation, the history of how the game came to be goes back even farther. Pokémon Go developer Niantic Inc. have been experimenting with map-based app projects for several years now. Members of its staff had worked with Google Maps and even on the Pokémon April Fool's joke, and Niantic founder John Hanke helped create Google Earth. Their first published app was called Field Trip, which suggested interesting places to visit near the user's location. The app's intended purpose was to help and encourage people to explore the world around them. Niantic took the basic premise of Field Trip and expanded upon it with their next project titled Ingress. Ingress is an augmented reality turf war game that uses a map interface for players to locate and capture hotspots called portals. The 2 opposing factions either capture existing portals or create new portals by submitting real-world landmarks to Niantic. Niantic wanted to create an open, real-world gaming platform that anyone could build upon or modify. Ingress was constructed with this in mind and would be used by Google and Niantic to help external partners and clients build their own games.